Hey, emergency Q&A recording. So I'm going to be playing Earth Defense Force 4.1 Shadow of New Despair. It's a game I've been playing recently on the channel, so this is like different in that most of the Q&A videos lately have been like a brand new thing I play for the first time ever and stuff like that. No, this is a game I've been playing lately with Wander and Bird. It'll relate to some of the topics I want to cover today, but also this is an emergency last-second recording because I lost track of how my schedule was going to work out, and it's 11 o'clock at night and time to record the Q&A for tomorrow because I have not done that yet. I was gone all day. Whoops. Did not plan ahead for this at all, so I was like, let's just play a game I'm already playing that fits this formula, because you want to talk about mindless games and stuff. This is a game where this is a game I've been playing with Wander and Bird that functionally we already treat as like a podcast in its existing form, because that's kind of how it works. I love that it has split screen local, by the way. That's a great feature to have. So this is a game where we just play and shoot the shit. It'll be good for me to play this for a Q&A because it gives me a chance to farm some health for my character and other stuff while I'm doing this, so it's a decent idea. Let's see. Do I have to start from the beginning? Can I not select a mission? Because that's really weird. Oh well, let's just get started. Oh yeah, I have to start from the beginning. Alright, well, the important thing is I get a chance to have a nice conversation about all the topics we want to cover. So first thing up, why am I in this situation in the first place? It's something worth talking about. I'm gonna podcast for a little bit about this topic as opposed to jumping straight into let's skip cutscenes in case they're dialogue heavy or something. I'm gonna do a little podcasting on what's going on with the channel lately a little bit, and then I'm gonna start doing the Q&A because I think this stuff is related enough to stuff that's like it's like less than a Q&A territory because people haven't asked the questions explicitly, but more in like a FAQ territory, and that it's questions that may come up over time. So I'm updating or reassessing a certain element of the thing I've talked about lately as being like the 6 videos per day schedule. This idea that I do, I have slots essentially. That, as a reminder, there's the Patreon slot, which is whatever game the Patreon supporters vote for, and we vote for a new one whenever the previous one's over. Then there's the puzzle slots, the indie slots, and then there's 3 other slots that are kind of miscellaneous. They're generally thought to be AAA games because they tend to be large and time-consuming, and RPGs and stuff like that. That's just like it's basically just it's not really a category, and more like it's a corral. Like that's where the big stuff is sort of corralled so it doesn't bleed over and consume the poor small game slots that historically were getting consumed. And to be clear, those indie game and puzzle game slots are a minimum, not a maximum. So like I could easily just, if there's a deluge of indie games coming out, which might be true soon, because I already have this big backlog of indie games I want to cover, but also multiple ones are coming out soon. Like the next game from the Bastion people is coming out, there's a Souls-like indie game coming out, and there's a few other things that look interesting. If I have a bunch of ones I want to cover at once, they could easily bleed into those 3 other slots if they want to. That's completely within the realm of possibility. It's just that I want to make sure that those slots exist at all, but they can definitely become more than they already are. That's fine. And I'm bringing this up because I'm reassessing a little bit about how those slots work a little bit, because in the past I've made the point to say that multiplayer stuff, for example, is like outside of that, and that's not going to be, like, multi-person stuff being outside of it is not 100% true, because I've been thinking about a specific condition, which is basically the condition of when, like, Wander and I, a while ago, we played Divinity Original Sin. It was a large CRPG playthrough. It was like dozens of episodes long. It was a kind of a big deal as playthroughs go, and it was a long one. And that kind of thing is different from my normal stuff. Like when I play EDF or Orcs Must Die Unchained or Factorio and other things like that with Bird and Wander, it's really casual. We just pick it up, we play it for however long we feel like it, and maybe one day it just stops one day, or maybe we take a few weeks off and then come back finally, or maybe it just peters out one day like Orcs Must Die did and just never comes back. And like that's part of how that format works. We pick games that can just kind of start and stop whenever, and that's just part of what works out for that stuff. But a playthrough is different, and like something like Divinity Original Sin, that's a playthrough. That's a different beast than just a multiplayer game, for example, because we need to commit to it, essentially. Like, we're going to play through this long RPG campaign. We're going to start at the beginning. We're going to pay attention to what's going on. We're going to beat the thing, and we're going to go through the end. It's going to have a finale. Like, that's a different kind of beast. And that stuff needs to be treated differently, because I've talked about treating the multiplayer stuff as being extraneous. There's 6 slots and then some wibbly-wobbly amount of D&D podcasting and multiplayer stuff. And I treat EDF and PlayerUnknown Battleground and stuff like that as being the extraneous stuff. But something like Original Sin would have to get more priority than that. It would have to get one of the 6 slots for a few reasons. One, it needs to be treated as a priority series to make sure that it's getting the output that's necessary for that kind of playthrough. But also, like, I can't overburden myself. Like, I need to make sure it gets one of the slots, because if I have to play that one game that's arbitrarily cut off from other games just because it's multiplayer, but then also have to maintain 6 other playthroughs in parallel, that's too much. Like, that's going to make it nearly impossible to actually maintain the output I'm planning for that particular playthrough. And so that's why I want to make sure that stuff gets the attention it deserves. And I'm bringing that up because Andrew is also kind of a bit of a special case. We generally do playthroughs, much in the vein of the original Sad Games thing we did back in the day, and I have to commute to get to his place. Like, we record at his place, I drive for like an hour to get there, and I have a great time doing that, and I like the shows that come out of it. That's the type of stuff I make with Andrew is often some of the favorite stuff that I like to make, like stuff like our dumb Resident Evil 7 playthrough and stuff like that. Like, I actually like 2-person commentary stuff quite a bit, and we get to sit down on a couch together and actually be in the same room with each other, which is not everyone fully understands that, but like, that is such a big difference for a Let's Play. The chemistry is different, the interactions are different, you're in the same room with each other, you can actually look at each other to see each other's reactions to stuff, and even ignoring like the Skype possible solutions for face cam and stuff like that, like there's no VoIP, so like there's no delay. It's something that you don't really fully realize, but if you want to know the difference between doing a Let's Play over the internet versus doing a Let's Play over in the same room on a couch, for example, just try experiencing the difference between playing Cards Against Humanity with a group of friends in a room around a table, and playing Cards Against Humanity with the same friends on the internet in a chat room on the like online version of like the fans have made, where you just like click on menus to present the cards and stuff like that. Like, and you'll see how different the chemistry can be, and how that can also then carry into, like, say, if you were recording that, how that would carry into the video being entertaining in different ways. So, like, with Wander and Bird, we make things work in a certain way, but it's not quite the same thing as it would be if we were on the same couch together, and I constantly wish that there would be eventually an opportunity to be able to play stuff in the same room as each other, because that's just, it's a different thing, and it's a thing that I like to make. And so that's what I am doing with Andrew. But the thing is, if I'm going to commute to his house once a week or twice a week, like when I go to his house, we clear out the day, and that day is just recording the thing that we're up to, that I've been doing with him, and that's a huge time commitment. And if that's going to happen, I need it to get the full like respect on my schedule, basically, that a normal, like, one of the 6 slots gets, because otherwise it's just unfeasible, and it gets really, really difficult to manage. It's easy to just go to Andrew's place and be like, let's do a Let's Try, it's a one-off video, throw it on my schedule somewhere, and then we'll move on. But doing, like, a series, and being able to commit to, like, making sure that videos come out daily for that series, and that the series gets finished in a timely manner, is way harder. And so, I want that to be a thing that happens. Because that's how it all started, that's what I enjoy, I like making that kind of content and all that other stuff, but also because we're already doing it, frankly, and I need to figure out how to make it fit the schedule correctly. And so that's what I'm reassessing about that, is that that stuff I said about the Divinity or stuff, it also applies to playthroughs with Andrew, is that those are playthroughs. That's not multiplayer shenanigans of that are indeterminate playthroughs that can start and stop whenever. That's a proper playthrough, just like everything else I do. It just happens to have another person and a drive attached to it. These people are not going to stop. These ants are relentless right now. Oh my god. And so that's going to be a thing. Is like, right now I have a plan. If you want to know what game we're playing, we've been playing a game called 999, 9 persons, 9 doors, 9 hours. I don't know what the title's actually. It's those words in some order that I can't tell you for sure. Wow, they got really bitey. There we go. It's the doors, persons, whatever, can be rearranged until you get to the correct title. But it's a visual novel escape room hybrid that frankly leans really heavily into the escape room part. I mean, really heavily into the visual novel part, which, sure, it's fine. I would prefer it to be heavier into the escape room part, but it's a quirky thing, and people keep asking me to play it. I've been getting tons of requests to play the Zero Escape series, and this is the first game of its series. And so I wanted to get around to that, and we're finally doing that. And I'm doing it with Andrew, which will be a mixed result. It'll be mixed feedback for a number of reasons. One is it's going to take up one of the 6 slots, so it's going to take up a slot that could otherwise really could be given to something else. Also, it's with Andrew, which mixed results there on what people think about that. Both the idea of it being a multi-person playthrough and the idea of it being an Andrew, specifically an Andrew playthrough. Not everyone's on this unequal agreement whether that's a good idea, and I get that. It's totally valid, because if you subscribe to my channel, you subscribe because of my personality and you want to see my content specifically, and if you subscribe to my channel to see my content, then having other people show up and essentially replace that kind of content, like, that is a real thing. Like, I think about, of course, like the fact that, like, I mentioned Game Grumps a lot, but it's fitting once again. It's our channel I'm intimately aware of, so it come up a lot in a lot of concepts, and this is another one of them, which is that, for those who don't know, Eagle Raptor and JonTron created the Let's Play channel Game Grumps back in, like, 2012, which I'll note, well, we get called rip-off sometimes, but that's a year after Sad Game started, so we actually started before they did. One of the things that happened is that they ran the channel for like 11 months, and then JonTron left. He moved across the country, he left the channel, and he was replaced by another person. And there was so much drama in the community about that happening. And as much as it's fun to make fun of how stupid the drama was, they're not wrong. They're wrong for getting so worked up over a freaking video game channel, yes, but they're not wrong about the reason that is bothering them specifically, because when you follow a specific channel for a specific dynamic, and that dynamic changes, then you're not really... There's a very good chance you won't like the new dynamic. It's hard to find a dynamic or a personality that you like, so having that person get replaced or that dynamic getting shifted is difficult. Like, sometimes one personality is strong enough that it can carry through, but sometimes having a person you like interact with a different person in their comedy entertainment than the person that they used to can lead to an irrevocable change in the content. It'd be like as if you watched my channel every day for 3 years, and then one day I was just replaced by a different person out of nowhere. Like, that changing a dynamic between two people is similar. It's not quite as drastic, but it is similar in that the core thing has changed, and it might be irrevocably unlikable to some people. And that's the thing. And then, so then you're essentially, when you have a group of people, you're essentially rolling the dice over and over again for each person as to whether or not individuals in your audience will like that person. So there's first the dice roll for me, which is somewhat biased in the fact that people are subscribed to the channel, so that dice roll's happened in the past somewhere, and they're already subscribed to my channel, and now they like me, and that's presumably the case. If they don't, then what the fuck are their life decisions that are leading them to continue to watch my videos? But then if I add Bird, or Wander, or Shell, or Wings of Redemption, or Andrew, or Radiant, or Lost Spider, or a bunch of other people, or Colonel RPG, and Bumping McSquibs, and a bunch of other names, I could probably name more, but every time I add one of those people to a situation, basically there's a dice roll happening for every single one of them as to whether or not the viewer will like that person too. And whether that matters or not varies. How strong is their personality, how vocal are they, how large is the group, and how much of that group is that person, for example. So like, if you have 2 people and people don't like one of those people, then that's more of a problem than if you have 6 people and people don't like one of those people. Like, for Achievement Hunter, there's a 6-person group, and a lot of people, like, for example, don't really like Jack. But he's one of 6 people, so you can kind of just get over it sometimes. But then when Jack's one of 2 people in a video, then he's more heavily weighted into that, and then that's more of a concern for that, whether or not you'll keep watching that video. And so that's a concern I have to worry about, of course, is whenever I partner with someone, there's a very real thing of like, oh, that could actively hurt my content because people could hate that particular person for valid and invalid reasons, but really a number of valid reasons that just come down to like taste and opinion that can never be fixed. Like Andrew, for example, can't necessarily change his behavior to make people like him more as much as just like become a massively different person overnight, whereas like it's really just that people just don't like a person or do like a person based on who they are generally, and it's more reasonable that the people will make different decisions about what to watch than that the person themselves will change who they are in order to become appeal to different people. Especially since, like, if you appeal to different people, you're really just ceasing to appeal to the people that you did appeal to before, so, like, even then, you don't win. Like, people tell me to be... Every now and then people get mad at me for being critical of video games, for example, and then they're like, they cite some other YouTuber that's just, like, nauseatingly positive all the time. Like, just stuff I resent to see on the internet, and I hate that kind of content. I hate that... like, Spike TV style, like, relentless positivity, like you're a cornerstone of the freaking PR department of the game you're covering, creepiness. Like, I hate that kind of content so much, and people are like, be like that, you'll appeal to more people. It's like, well, will I appeal to people, more people? Maybe, but more importantly, I'll appeal to different people. Like, different people than the people I'm already appealing to, and I'll be a different person, and I'll not necessarily be happy with what I've done to myself on top of that. So I think it's important to be true to what you are, and sometimes you bring on to other people who are true to what they are, and that doesn't always fly with everyone. And I'm bringing this up to some extent because I've made the executive decision to treat this upcoming 999 playthrough, which is one of my 6 slots and is taking up a concrete chunk of my schedule until its completion, and I'm choosing to make it a multi-person thing when it could have been a solo thing. And that's a specific decision that I have to make, and it comes with costs and benefits. For me, the cost is not everyone who follows my stuff likes multi-person videos, then that's absolutely fair because my channel's built around solo content, so it's unfair to expect everyone to like multi-person videos. And then, of course, there's always the risk that people won't like the specific person in specific. I said specific twice, it's fine. Like, that's always a risk, and that's just a thing I have to think about. But I think that that's outweighed by the fact that I think the content is better when presented in this way. Not all content. I will not be playing... I'm not going to play, like, a Mass Effect or Dragon Age game, or, like, a long-form RPG full of cutscenes and narrative and characters I care about with Andrew, because that stuff doesn't fly. That doesn't fly with our dynamic. But a... anime-style visual novel, where I have control over the flow of the thing, and it has voice acting, and we do some puzzle solving and stuff like that, and there's like a mystery at stake. I think that's better with another person. Not only another person, but a person that I specifically am used to interacting with in a commentary, like, back and forth way, and like speculating and telling jokes and stuff like that. Like, I think that the 9-9 series is better with Andrew than without Andrew. So I make that call, and like, this is just another case of me using this series as a platform to just give you very long, in-depth explanations of my thought processes that I don't fit anywhere else, basically. So I make the call, like, I'm gonna do this with Andrew. And it's working out great so far. I am very happy with it, which is that it's a escape room visual novel, but it leans heavy on the visual novel, so that means that every now and then we have, like, point-and-click style puzzle-solving elements for a little while, but for large chunks of the game just will talk at you for like 2 hours straight, and maybe eventually you make a one-branching decision that does genuinely affect the story in major ways, but those are so sparse out that it's just story happening, and it's non-interactive. It's not like a BioWare game where they even pretend you're interacting with it. You're not manually driving the conversation to seek more information, and you're not making like micro decisions that affect how you interact with individual players. Like, you are literally just like riding out the wave as the story happens at you for hours. But that would be I feel like that would be miserable if it was just me. Like, Dr. Decker was already pushing a little bit because it was just me alone, and it was a mystery scenario where I couldn't necessarily interact with large chunks of the story and was kind of just mining it out, and may or may not have been better to have another person along for the ride. But this case specifically, I think I need another person, because it would just be me alone witnessing the story that's happening at me, and I could just like occasionally offer a thought here and there, but not really know where to go with it necessarily. But once you add another person to the equation, I have a person to talk to. They can raise theories, I can raise theories, we can talk back and forth, we can workshop and problem solve each other's ideas, and we can tell jokes, and we can discuss characters and stuff like that, and like we can even go on asides where which has happened multiple times now, where a concept comes up that we want to discuss at length, and like because the game is like a press A to continue type dialogue system, it technically has an auto mode, but I've not been using it. I can like keep pressing A, and we'll get to, and we're progressing the dialogue, and then the moment one of us starts talking, I just stop pressing A, and the story just pauses for a while we have our aside where we discuss either a theory about the story, or we're like trying to solve what's happening, or we're trying to theorize something, or we're trying to question a character or a dialogue thing, or even criticize the game a lot of the time, or go on a tangent related to something because the game raises some kind of idea. Like that kind of stuff I think works best. And so I'm very happy with how things are going so far. I've been constantly behind because the series is not airing yet, and we've been recording a chunk of it. I'm something like 15, I think we're like 15 hours or 10 hours into it, so like I'll probably have like 20 episodes ready before it even starts airing. So right now I feel constantly behind, but the moment the series starts airing, it is going to be like a sigh of relief for my schedule, because out of nowhere I'll have this entire slot that's like accounted for like almost a month because of how much backlog we have, and I just need to focus on recording 5 games during my normal weekly recording schedules instead of, daily recording schedules, as opposed to 6, which is a change of pace that I welcome. So I think this is how I'm going to handle stuff. If I record a playthrough, which is different from just like multiplayer Let's Plays, if I'm recording a proper playthrough with Wander or Andrew, where we're going to go through the whole thing, I'm going to find a space in my schedule to make that fit one of the 6 slots, and that's going to be how that generally plays out. And I think that's the smart way to handle this schedule-wise. And it's a calculated risk, because every time I do stuff with other people, then I'm essentially robbing a chunk of my daily output from a chunk of my audience, because they expect this many videos, and that turns out it's like a form of video that essentially doesn't count for some people because it's not what they're here for. But I think it pays off. And I don't really necessarily have a gargantuan major point to get to, but I just wanted to cover the general idea and a lot of the thought processes that come into some of the stuff, because it comes up from time to time. People question about this kind of stuff and the group stuff and things like that, and it's good to get some of this stuff out here, and it gives me a video I can point to when people ask questions related to some of these subjects. So we'll see how it goes, we'll see how people respond to it, and it'll probably be the general way that my schedule deals with stuff like the Sad Games videos nowadays. We're actually doing 2 different things, if you guys, anyone missed the memo, by the way. We're essentially doing 2 different things with Andrew right now. 999 is the big one, that's the one I'm planning on airing soon. The other one is we have an ongoing series called Teach Andrew Soulsborne, basically. We started with Demon Souls and we moved on to Dark Souls, where I'm just trying to teach Andrew Dark Souls games, because he's never picked up on those games. And so if you want to find that, go to my front page and there's a playlist for that. It's just in there with my current Let's Plays on the front of my YouTube profile, even though it's not a playlist from my channel, it's actually the playlist of his videos. So he's uploading those, and you have to go to his channel to watch them. I plan on eventually uploading them, I think. It's just that I need to contextualize it, I suppose. I need us to hit a point in the playthrough where I feel like we've reached a certain milestone, like most likely just beating one of the games, and then I'll be like, okay, now I have like a series I can upload that has a beginning, middle, and end, and then I'll upload that. Just because I didn't want to upload like 10 episodes of a series and be like, look at this new thing, and then it just cuts off. Like, Andrew gave up, he couldn't take any more of Soulsborne, which is it's always a very real risk. So for now, it's an experiment that lives on his channel, and you guys can go watch it there if you want to. But once I figure out what to do with it, it'll eventually air on my channel too, I believe. That's been an interesting little experiment for sure. Don't have a ton else to go on that one, I think. So let's go ahead and discuss the first question of the day. 25 minutes into this thing, probably. Sorry if that bothers anyone, but I figured that was all FAQ-ish. Oh, I'm gonna die now, aren't I? That was all in like the FAQ territory of like stuff that I feel like people would be wanting to hear about what's going on the channel. It's stuff where it's like I like to put out the information for those that want to hear it, that are willing to sit through explanations of the stuff and like to be informed on everything. But it's not really the type of topic that's entirely worth like its own standalone like announcement video, because it's not really something that needs to be announced so much as just provided for the people willing to seek out the information, because it's just not urgent or anything. But it's good for those that like to keep informed. So the first question of today, and I'm also going to podcast on this one a bit for today. I already know, because I picked it out as the first question of the day intentionally for that purpose. It's Charlie the Unicorn. I gotta pause to read this because I'm dying. Do you have... that's the wrong spot. Charlie the Unicorn, since you like Gwent so much, would you ever consider doing a series on the online version of it? And if so, how would you do it? So this is going to be the last question I answer about will you play game X or Y for either a long time or forever. By the way, if you haven't picked it up, I'm trying to pick up loot to help my character out, so that's why I'm chasing after boxes here. It's probably... it's on top of this building, isn't it? I'm going to avoid questions like this in the future for a while, or maybe forever, for a few reasons. But first we'll answer the question itself, which is, will I play Gwent? The answer is basically, I don't know. The first priority for me is to finish the Gwent tournament that I left off in... oh, there it is. I want to finish the Gwent tournament that I left off on in the second expansion pack for Witcher 3. Which, I think I started that... Oh, Jesus. Was that June of 2016? Has it been over a year already? How? How did that happen? So I finished the main story of Witcher 3 and both expansions, and then I was getting ready to finish... I wanted to do a bonus series where I was doing the Gwent tournaments of the game, the new expansion. I'm just going to give up on that item. I was working on the Gwent tournament that they introduced with a new expansion, with a new deck and everything like that. And I took a minor break. It was supposed to just be a few days because I was busy. And it's just like that, it sneaks up on you like, oh my god, it's been a month since I last did the Gwent video. Oh my god, it's been 3 months since I last did a Gwent video. Oh my god, has it been a year since I last did the Gwent video? And it just sneaks up on you like that, and I hate when that happens. That's basically how Arkham Knight and a few other playthroughs got cancelled, essentially, was that I never meant for them to... I like, didn't quite have time for them for a little bit, and then I never intended them to be gone for that long, and then they were just gone forever. I'm like, oh, shit. So, first of all, if I do a Gwent thing, my first priority is to go back and actually finish that series. My logic there is that the whole point of the new Gwent is to be an evolution of Gwent, which, is, for those that don't know, is a card game that originates inside of Witcher 3. Some people have called out the fact that it's almost a copy of an existing card game that exists in real life already. I don't remember what it was, but it was like it honestly seemed kind of obscure, but I don't even know if that's the case for sure or not. But it was a side game, which is relatively common. A lot of RPGs, both Western and Japanese, have a lot of like tendency towards side games. Like, what was it called? I think the one in Knights of the Republic was it called Quasar? And then like people know about Triple Triad from Final Fantasy VIII, I think. And then there was even like gambling machines that were like a weird like form of like almost like video blackjack or something in even in Mass Effect 1 and stuff like that. Like, it comes up from time to time, and sometimes it's a straight up collectible card game. Like whatever the card game was, I don't know if it's Quasar or not, and KOTOR was like a series of collectible cards that would allow you to play the game. And Gwent is one of those. It's a straight up like Magic the Gathering style like collectible card game that you actually collect throughout the entire campaign of the game, and you play it throughout it. And it's actually, I love it. I love how it's integrated. I love that it feels massively different from most card games. Most card games nowadays seem to be about you establish a number of resources that allow you to summon certain monsters, and then you fight your monsters versus the enemy's monsters for the ability to eventually attack the player directly that has some number of life points that you hurt or something, which I believe is how Yu-Gi-Oh! Works, and I think that's how Magic works, and I think that's even how Hearthstone works, and a bunch of other games work. Gwent does not work like that. Gwent is weirdly a game about almost like bluffing, or it's almost like poker-like, in that instead of that formula, what happens is that you have instead a 3-round game where you basically place monsters and powers on the board, taking turns, and the monsters you play count as the overall power you have, and you play certain cards that hurt your enemy or help your monsters. But the big thing is that you need to win best 2 of 3, and you don't draw new cards between rounds, except specific conditions. Like, generally, you're making one hand last 2 to 3 rounds in a best of 3 game, and you need to be measured about how much you use in the early rounds and how much you save for later rounds, and whether or not you throw the first round on purpose and stuff like that, in order to draw out your enemy's cards and things like that. Like, it's a breath of fresh air that it's different, and I loved it particularly in Witcher 3, because they specifically it would actually be part of the story. Every player, characters throughout the game would acknowledge that it existed as a thing. They acknowledge that Gwent existed. You can even play Gwent to solve quests. Like, there'd be quests where somebody would like have taken something from another person, or there'd be a dispute or something, and you as Geralt of Rivia, if you have a good enough Gwent deck that you think you can rely on it, could choose at some times to specifically say, hey, what if I play you for it? And you'd basically be like playing poker for something, and you'd you'd be resolving a problem on someone's behalf by playing their foe for the with a poker stand-in for the right to take the thing back that they had, or something like that. And like, you could literally solve main story and side story missions at times by playing Gwent. It's the coolest shit, and it's a cool game, but it's not that balanced, and the AI is not amazing, and frankly there are certain strategies that are more successful than others and can even be borderline broken, and will never become unbroken because the AI is not going to learn from what you do the way a player would. So generally, it's safe to say that the free-to-play one's likely going to be an improvement in every way from the original version, because it's meant to be played against other people and has to be balanced as a proper competitive experience, as opposed to what it was in Witcher 3, which was like a surprisingly intricate but still not entirely balanced diversion that you played against AI when you felt like it. It's like the difference between playing Dragon Age at times and like it's like the idea of playing Dragon Age where you run around and fight monsters with your party, as opposed to playing a similar game that's meant to fight other players, whereas like the player version has to be more balanced because there's people on both ends of the equation, whereas a game like Dragon Age doesn't have to be entirely balanced because it's just meant to be you go fight some monsters and you go fight a whole bunch of monsters, and the monsters don't have to have a fair chance at winning because there's just a bunch of monsters for you to defeat because you're the player and they're not real. So my approach is that because of all this stuff I've said, I want to play I want to finish the in-game tournament first before I ever touch anything on the online side. That said, I'm skittish about playing the online version ever on some level because it's a competitive thing. At one point I was more into the idea of I was going to play the early access thing. I was in the beta. I might have even been in the alpha at one point, and I believe I had permission to make videos, and I've been in this forever, and I just still haven't played it. And that was mostly because I just kept being too busy, and I was clinging to the idea of finishing the Witcher 3 part first. I wanted to finish the Witcher 3 Gwent thing first, so I kept telling me, okay, I'll just around the corner, I'll just finally have enough time to take care of that, then I can finally play the online Gwent version. Now, enough time has passed that the online Gwent version is now live, I believe. I think it's not, I don't think it's even in beta anymore, I think. I haven't kept super close track. But it's definitely open, like everyone can play it. And so now you have the new concern of that, like, now it's time for the meta, as we discussed in the previous video when we were talking about RTSs, which is, now there's a player base that plays it constantly, all the time, forever. And it's a head-to-head match, so like you have to show up and fight this one dude, and I don't know if I can keep up with the meta with my style of video making, like where I just make one video every now and then. Like I don't know how to fit The Witcher into my schedule, where like it doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end. It's not a campaign. It's just a head-to-head match thing. So I don't really know how to fit into my schedule and what form that would take exactly, and it's weird to think about. And I'll probably be really bad at it, which is something I don't feel great about on some levels. One, because I'll be playing against people that are going to destroy me, but also, like, then I get to deal with, like, the comments, which is people from my existing audience or people coming from outside of my audience to see Gwent videos just complaining endlessly about my gameplay, which is something that there's certain videos I've made in the past that show me not playing games well, where I just get to deal with the shitty comments for all of eternity. Because sometimes some videos are just evergreen on negative comments, and you'll get the same negative comments forever. Like, a rare case was that I got so tired of the negative comments happening that were almost the same comment all the time, forever, that it was just not new information, and it was always coming in, that I actually turned off the comments on part 1 of my Black Desert Online series, because I'm just tired of hearing the same complaints from people all the time. Like, the video's never gonna change. It's up already. It's over. So I don't look forward to negative comments from playing competitive games that other people know way better, because card games are rough about that, because you can objectively say when someone's playing poorly. Like, there are optimum plays and optimum deck builds, and just like, or even ignoring decks, because honestly, like, one of the turnoffs for me is I'm not super into deck building, and I'm not necessarily good at it, but also not super interested in it. So I know that my deck will be suboptimal regardless, but there's also just the issue, like, I know I will make suboptimal plays, where, like, every comment will be like, at that moment you should have done that thing, and then you would have won, and oh, you idiot, you blew it, you gave him the game, and stuff like that. Which makes me not super into the idea of playing that kind of stuff for that reason, too. And, like, and funnily enough, I actually did upload I think it was 2 episodes of, it might have been 1 episode, of me playing Hearthstone way back when I was in the early beta for that, too. And I had a similar feeling of just like, wow, it feels really weird to film myself playing a card game, because I'm so self-conscious about all the plays I'm playing now that people are watching, because, like, it's so much easier to backseat game that kind of game than it is, like, PUBG. In PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, like, you just go do whatever you feel like. And frankly, the backseat gaming, like, moment to moment, like, oh, the firing modes, or whatever the hell that some people say, like, sure, they're right, but, like, at the end of the day, I've won multiple games of PUBG at a mathematically unlikely rate, so, like, I can confidently say that, like, I'm doing an alright job at PUBG, even if, I'll get criticism from time to time, but, it's different when it's something that specific. Like in some games, like, if it was a shooter or an action game, there's a lot of stuff where, like, you specifically, it's just twitch, and it's hard to keep track of exactly when you go wrong. It's like just a matter of, like, get good. It's just the vague concept of being good at games, and it's harder to articulate what's going wrong when you lose. But when you lose at a card game, it's literally like, no, you were supposed to play this at that moment, and you played that, which was a terrible idea. It's always a bad idea. How could you do that? And so, like, it's so easy to backseat game that kind of game that I feel like, even though I might enjoy the game, I feel myself constantly recoiling away from the idea of doing videos on it, because the sheer amount of backseat gaming it invites, because of the literal, like, turn-based nature and very clear, like, a right and a wrong of the gameplay that there often exists, gives you a general sense of, like, it just might be a miserable experience. I don't completely count out the idea. What I might consider doing is essentially, like, a season strategy. It's an episode structure I've thought of a few times now, specifically in the context of Portal. Because I've covered Portal, Portal 2, and Portal Mel's Stories, or whatever the exact thing was, that particular expansion, and I plan on playing all of the Portal fan/custom games or mod campaigns that have come out there. But one of the ongoing things I've thought about is, how do I deal with Portal 2's custom maps? Because I know there's gotta be, like, so many good maps out there, right, for the custom map maker thing, and so I want to do stuff on that. But the question, of course, is, the puzzle slot is generally like, I start a game, it has a beginning and a middle and an end, and then there's like, you hit the finale and then you start the next thing. How do you handle that for stuff like that, where it's just like an open-ended, like, I play some maps of whatever, And my general idea was the idea of, like, what if I did a season, essentially? Like, I would play a season of Portal custom maps, which would be, like, I play 10 episodes, basically. Or 10 maps. I would download 10 multiplayer 10 custom Portal 2 maps, and play them all in a row. And then record that, put those up, and then that would be, like, the finale of that season. It probably wouldn't be called a finale, but that'd be the end of that chunk. And then I would leave and go back to playing other puzzle games, and then maybe like 2 months later I come back for another season of like 10 Portal 2 maps again, or 5, or whatever the hell. Like that kind of thing comes to mind. And so I could see myself maybe deciding to do that with Gwent, just to try it out. It'd be like, I am going to specifically make a season where I play, let's say something like, along the lines of like, I'll play 10 matches of Gwent. Like, I'll start from scratch, build my first deck, and I'll play 10 matches, and then we'll just upload that, and then I'll move on to something else, and then maybe if people liked it, I would come back to it later, or not. Experimental stuff. Might happen, might never happen. It's just stuff to think about. It's weird thinking about how much you, like, have to, like, doing Let's Play stuff, it's weird thinking about how much you have to suddenly think about, like, I'm dead. I was so covered in crap, I couldn't deal with anything about that. It's weird how much these discussions about how the Let's Play stuff works comes down to, like, scheduling and time management. It's because you're trapped with this general concept of, like, having basically, like, infinite options and, like, infinite things you could do and limited time, and, like, not only limited time but, like, a specific, like, bandwidth and throughput of what you can do per day on top of just what you can generally cover from a top-down perspective. And so, like, it's interesting how much it comes up to that, specifically. So basically, like it always is for this kind of question, the answer to Gwent is basically maybe, just like how a lot of them have been. And I have detailed some of the reasons why and some of the reasons why not. And I said I wanted to podcast about this for a bit, and that's because this time specifically, I'm saying this is going to be, like, probably the last time I answer a question like this. I'm probably going to skip the remaining emails I have that are asking, will you play this game, will you play that game? And that's because I feel like I have exhausted the number of answers, essentially. At this point, I feel like I've answered every variation of the question, except for the part where, you know, insert game XYZ. And that's the issue, is that people could essentially ask this question infinite times, because games never stop coming out. And you could literally ask thousands of times, will you play this game, will you play this game, will you play this game, and people go down to, like, their laundry list of every game they ever wished I would play, basically. And that's just not feasible for the series, because I'm going to start repeating myself a lot. And I feel like I've avoided that so far by answering questions about different games where the answer being no or yes or maybe is for wildly different reasons, but I think I've covered all the reasons now. And so to recap, basically, like, we talk about Darkest Dungeon, for example, like, that touches into two things, which is early access and grindiness. Some games I will avoid / discontinue because there is a sheer repetition to them that doesn't necessarily mean the game isn't fun or is bad, but it makes it incredibly hard to talk about the game long term, especially when you've already done 100 episodes or 132 episodes or 37 episodes or whatever it is that I've done for specifically Darkest Dungeon. Like, you can't play something like that forever and keep talking over it and expect yourself to do anything besides say the same thing you've already said 100 times before. And so that's why I'm not interested in continuing a game like that specifically, and why I try to avoid starting games like that in the future, hopefully. And it's like, that's one variation of the question. The other one is, like, talking about, like, nostalgic games and childhood games of other people. When people talk about playing all these games from the 90s and the 2000s, and old PC games and other really, really specific questions about what to play, is, like, the issue is, of course, that, like, everyone has a specific nostalgia, and the things that are from the past aren't that you appeal to you aren't necessarily the same ones that appeal to me. And so while you might like to see me play that game specifically, and I understand that oftentimes these are games that I literally look at it, I'm like, it doesn't draw me in even a little bit. Like, that's just not a thing I'm necessarily interested in, and we can't always share the same background or interest in said background. The other thing was with the competitive thing, talking about RTS, is just like, competitive online games take thousands of hours to properly master and get into. And so when you play a competitive game, you have to be consumed by it. Like, I've played Halo 2 and Dead or Alive 4 in the past, and I suck at them now, I'm sure. In fact, I'm pretty sure we confirmed that, because Andrew and I went online once in the Master Chief Collection to play Halo 2 for a bit, and I was like completely lost and out of my element, despite the fact that I'd played that game for a year straight and once upon a time. You have to obsess over those games. Like Wings of Redemption and stuff like that, people like that make channels about it, like that play competitive games, it be it League of Legends or Call of Duty or whatever, you'll see that they like obsess over it. Like that's all their channel is for years. And that's because you have to go deep down that well to play deeply competitive things like StarCraft 2 or whatnot, because you have to be so obsessed with it that you can compete. And there are games that have these big learning curves, and they require a commitment. People that play those games play them for thousands of hours, and they literally just sit down and play them every day after work, and that's just what they do. And so, like, even a lot of them are even kids, because that's just the people that have that kind of time and that routine of coming home from school and playing the same game all the time. And so as somebody who creates a variety of content, that's just the type of thing I can't cover without just making cringe videos, basically, where I'm just like, what's this do? What's going on? I'm just dying constantly, because I'm way out of my depth. And so that's a choice, is that I choose to make my kind of channel as opposed to that kind of channel, and that's just kind of non-negotiable, basically. And so those are basically most of the variations, really, is talking about specific, like, classic games people want me to play, or competitive games, or grindy games, or this other context of, actually, the Gwent one was also basically another competitive game, but there's a bunch of different reasons why the answer is maybe or yes or no, and frankly, the vast majority of the time, if you ask me if I'll play a game or not, the answer will generally be maybe. In fact, I desperately need to cling to the answer maybe more often, because I have a tendency to overpromise future playthroughs that never happen. Because you'll remember, if you were there at the time, when I played through, what were they? Dishonored 2 and Deus Ex Mankind Divided. In both their cases, during Dishonored 2, I was looking forward to the idea of like, oh, I was playing it low chaos, and I was like, I can't wait to do a second playthrough where I do high chaos, and maybe even go back and do a high chaos playthrough of the original game. And then same thing with Mankind Divided. I was playing through a relatively stealthy, low on kills playthrough, and I was like, oh yeah, can't wait to go loud and brutal with a future playthrough and like play the game massively differently and maybe solve problems differently and stuff like that. Like, I was looking forward to that idea, because those games are like Prey, where you can play them in massively different ways, and so there's an appeal to the idea of replaying them. But playing the same game twice is just such a time commitment that's rough to commit to, because instead of playing the same game twice, I could play 2 games once. And that's like so much preferable. So while I find myself promising that kind of thing from time to time, I find that once it comes down to it and it's time to actually play that game twice, I find myself much more likely to play another game instead, rather than play the same game twice in a row, because it almost seems like a waste to commit to it for that long. Like, the only games I'll really do that for are Souls-likes usually, because in Souls-likes, those games, not only do they benefit from multiple playthroughs, they almost like mature. Like, you experience the game differently the second time around, and also they're just a game that I'm so specifically into on a big level that isn't replicatable anywhere else. Like, I'll play Assault and Sanctuary or a Dark Souls multiple times in a way that I won't anywhere else, because I am really into the idea of playing them in multiple playthroughs, whereas it's more of a side thing to do it for other franchises. But I still keep doing it. I still keep talking about the idea of playing additional playthroughs of that kind of thing, even though I know I won't. These things are obnoxious, by the way, these spiders. With this character build, at least. So I need to stop promising that kind of stuff. It's really a problem. And actually, it comes up with a thought of a thought I forgot to express before about Andrew with him playing the Souls games and stuff like that. One of the other reasons why I'm not in a hurry to air his playthroughs on my channel yet is because I've overpromised, in that I keep promising to play Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls again, because I played them back when I was worse at those games. Over the course of playing a lot of Dark Souls 2, because I played it 4 times on the channel, plus or minus some co-op stuff, I got way better at Souls-likes in general, and I want to, now that I would play the games differently, I want to properly play. God damn it! Am I gonna die this way? I want to go back and play the original 2 games, Dark Souls 1 and Demon's Souls, with my new skills, basically. And I can only do that if I actually go back and play them. And after promising repeatedly to do that, I don't want to then air Andrew's playthroughs of those instead, because it will feel like it's happening instead if I don't do my playthroughs I keep promising. And so that's what I hope to do, is I hope to go back to Demon's Souls and Dark Souls 1 to play as myself, alone, and to show how my playstyle has evolved and my skill has evolved, but also re-experience those games, because Demon's Souls, once you get past my first playthrough of this channel, which was Outlast, Demon's Souls was the first like big RPG playthrough I did on this channel, and then I transitioned directly from there into Dark Souls 1. So like that was the birth of my channel like 4 years ago. And I really haven't gone back to Dark Souls 1 since at all. Aside from this recent Andrew thing we just started. Like I have not been going back to Dark Souls, and I only went back to Demon's Souls once. How are they even hitting me with these webs through all these buildings? I only went back to Demon's Souls once, which was with Andrew, with Wander. He visited my house for a weekend. It was like 4 days or something like that, and I was like, hey, you know what we can get through in that time? Is a magic build sort of co-op playthrough of Demon's Souls, where every time we beat a boss, we would trade controllers, and the other guy would play the next level and stuff like that. Aside from that, I haven't touched Demon's Souls since when I originally played it in 2013. And even that was before I was getting necessarily as good as I am now-ish. Oh, Jesus. That was right up in my face. And so, like, I have additional reasons to just want to properly revisit Dark Souls and Demon's Souls again, as I've promised repeatedly, and I want to get around to that before people. And so, like, I feel like I'd just be stoking the fire if, instead of doing that, I started uploading the entire playthroughs of Andrew on my channel. And in fact, that might kind of deflate the idea. If I uploaded Andrew's playthroughs, then people might just be exhausted by the time I start uploading my playthroughs. Whereas going back and revisiting it myself, then maybe eventually getting around to uploading Andrew's, at that point Andrew's playthrough might even be refreshing or something by comparison, after watching me burst my way through the game to then watch somebody who, like, doesn't have that player experience you can take for granted. I also have a general desire to, like, remaster. I basically have a general desire to remaster those playthroughs, because Dark Souls stuff is so key to how my channel... I'm just going back to normal to go mindless a little bit for a little longer. The Dark Souls stuff is such a cornerstone of my channel at this point, and it's where a lot of my audience came from, aside from, like, Witness and some puzzle stuff, obviously, and, like, it's also one of my favorite things to do. And my original playthroughs have problems. Not only was I way better at the game, but I also would summon at times, which breaks certain encounters, so I still haven't... Like, for example, False King Allant is a boss fight that I've never properly played alone on this channel. Like, where it's me versus that boss, and I took him down. Because I summoned for the fight in my original playthrough, because I just hadn't even questioned the idea of, like, do I summon or not summon? I don't know. When I did the Demon's Souls playthrough, I'd only beaten Dark Souls 1 once. And I just took for granted, like, yeah, sometimes you summon, sometimes you don't, and that's fine. But, like, I became more aware over time that, like, yeah, summoning during a playthrough, while some people like it, there's definitely, like, a certain, like, expectation to beat the bosses yourself when you're doing a video series, and that's why we have a split now, where I do a solo playthrough of one of those games, then I do a co-op playthrough of those games. With Bird and Wander, for example. And by the way, speaking of things that take so much time and it's hard to time manage and everything, those things take forever to edit. So on a regular basis, I'm just, like, constantly struggling to figure out how to put out videos for those series, and it's really hard to find time to edit those things. Time management's hard. You don't have infinite time. And so since I was summoning for those playthroughs, I want to go back and be able to, like, summon and be able to fight those bosses myself, and have a series where I do that. Yeah, that little thing I just did. We'll get back to that later. Also, I had an issue where I hadn't found out about the resampling feature in my editing software, there's a thing called resampling in some editing softwares that makes your videos shittier, basically. And in mine, it's on by default. And for years, I could not figure out what it was. I would notice like a blurriness or an after-imageness to my videos, and I could not identify what was causing it at all. And it made my older videos look so much shittier than my newer ones. And I never knew what the problem was for the longest time until one day it finally clicked. And you could just see the gap between videos before and after that date on both my channel and on Sad Games that I was editing, because like it was just this secret I didn't know how to resolve. And in fact, I would then be on like watchdog mode for that particular feature, both on Andrew's channel and on Wander's channel, because I was like, oh, you left the resampling on, it made your video shitty. I'd be calling attention to that stuff so that they would become aware of like making sure they always turn that stuff off, because it makes the videos shittier. So if you watch my older videos, you see they're all weird and blurry, and if you pause it, you'll see there's an after image whenever if you pause it when something's in motion, you'll see there's like there's kind of two of everything, because there's like an after image. It's like a motion problem that feature causes. In addition to that, I had a shittier microphone, and I also had a very different approach to making videos. I had just had a generally different demeanor at the beginning of the channel. I was used to making content with Andrew, and there was a general like high energy sort of wacky thing we were generally doing, and we had clashing personalities, and that was like something we would rely on and stuff like that. And over time, I learned better how to handle solo stuff, and so some of the early stuff is a very immature version of solo commentary that is not what it is now. So a lot of people will actually go back to the old stuff, trying to check out my original Demon's Souls and Dark Souls playthrough, and they'll be like, I don't like it. I don't like you from back then, basically. And like, yeah, it's like and it's funny because I didn't consciously change. Like, some people even noted a change, because some people complained about it, and we're talking about how I changed and I suck now, for example, at one point. Like, I just, over time, my commentary changed on some level. How I do it changed, the energy level changed, the general feeling of it completely shifted at one point. I don't really know when it happened, to be honest. I genuinely don't know. There's just a before period and an after period, but there's no line that I can find, and that's probably because there isn't one. Because I'm sure it was probably gradual. May have had some connection to when I moved or something like that, and was working a job and everything like that, or some other stuff, maybe. But I changed, and so between the fact that modern me and old me are different people, both from a skill perspective and a personality, maybe not personality, but commentary perspective, and the video content is iffy for the old stuff, and also I played it in a way that I generally don't want to do for my solo stuff anymore. I want to revisit both of those old Souls games, and so that's going to be probably a higher priority than uploading the Andrew stuff. So all the more reason for you to go check it out on Andrew's channel if you're interested, because it is available, and I encourage people to check it out. I'm not saying to wait for it to come out on my channel to support me correctly or anything. Watch the content you want to watch, and maybe you'll get around to uploading it one day. I'll keep it in my back pocket until then. But for now, it's this fun experiment I do when I go over to his place. But it is one more reason why I need to treat 999 as its own series and give it proper priority, because I'm even juggling it on top of that video series that doesn't currently affect my current backlog, and that's worth going into. So that's a big old tangent, but it answers a number of questions that people bring up from time to time. So yes, I am still planning a Dark Souls and Demon's Souls playthrough. Don't entirely know when. The fact that Prey is about to finish, I would say that probably means that I'm probably going to beat... I'm probably going to do Surge next, I think. I feel a certain obligation to play Souls-likes on this channel, for obvious reasons. Even if it's not in a timely manner, I feel like I should still just get around to playing a game like Surge. Some people hate it, some people love it. There seems to be some amount of cult hit, which was not the case for their previous game, I don't think. I really don't think Lords of the Fallen was a cult hit for anyone, but it seems like some people are actually into the Surge this time around. And ultimately, I just need to get into it and see if I can form my own opinion about it, and also just generally judge it, and also experience it outright, so I can actually be able to talk about it. And also just have a series for a Souls-like on my channel that generally covers Souls-like. That's my channel. My channel has a puzzle category and an RPG category and an indie category and a few other categories on its like front page, and then and right on top, right, like next to the podcast and stuff like that, it has a freaking Souls-like category, which features the obvious stuff like the Dark Souls franchise and the Demon Souls franchise and Bloodborne, but also Salt and Sanctuary, Lords of the Fallen, and all the other games that fit into that general area. Neo, Necropolis, and now Surge. So I should get around to that. So once I finish Surge, maybe that'll be the time to finally strike at getting my playthroughs back of those Souls games. It seems like a bad idea to play 2 Souls-likes at once, is the main idea. So while I'm generally planning to play Surge after Prey, which I played Prey first because you guys voted for that more than Surge by a little bit of a margin. I might as well, since I'm going to play Surge, then, and I take for granted that I'm going to play it next, I figure I might as well wait till afterwards if I'm going to consider playing the other Souls games, because juggling Souls games, it seems like a bad idea. There's a second nature muscle memory element of those games with like roll timings and animation speeds and stuff like that, and like juggling between different ones at once would be a problem. But I also have, I definitely wish I could play the Souls games sooner though, or even be already playing them though on some level, just because it would definitely help me tutoring and guiding Andrew if I had recently or was in the middle of playing the games he's playing in his Teach Him Souls games. But frankly, just the fact that I know what to look up and know what details to research when needed, and also just know how to try to give him advice on how to play the game while he's going, because I've played them enough for that at least, means that we can at least make that series work, I think. Alright, so that we've already been at an hour, but I've only answered one question, so I should do one more. So I'll do a short-ish one. So Colonel RPG asks, how do you deal with hiccups when you're recording, including those really nasty ones that are more like murdered burps than actual hiccups? I've noticed you struggling to contain some every once in a while, but I'm just wondering. So like, this is actually something I found charming, because like, I'm like, oh, somebody's noticing this thing. Well, I'm sure everyone notices on some level, but have that called out is like an inevitability. An inevitability. That's not an easy string of syllables to get out. But basically, yeah, it's been interesting doing this constant commentary stuff, because you start to become conscious of how talking works, and your enunciation, and your breathing, and all these other things and stuff like that. It's been interesting to try to learn how to talk, basically. Like, you probably heard the ideas of, like, taking singing classes and orator classes, but then there's also just, like, I think you can take classes on, like, speaking, and not, like, public speaking, but just, like, communication, as in, like, how to talk to human beings and stuff like that, or even just broadcast voice and all these other things. And that's because it's a genuine skill, and I'm self-taught, and I'm stumbling upon it and learning new things and having problems with it all the time. And it's the most bizarre thing, because everyone talks, generally, and we're used to how talking works, but we don't question it, because all we're doing is talking to people and answering questions, or asking questions and discussing things, and, you know, being humans. But once you have a job that involves large amounts of communication, large amounts of orating and whatnot, these seams begin to appear, and they widen at times, and suddenly there's cracks in how you behave, and you're not sure how to get around some of them, and they catch you by surprise and stuff like that. And some of them is that stuff like burping and yawning and hiccups and stuff like that. And it also varies from person to person, because of like how gassy people are, or like how their body's made up and how they treat these kinds of things, or even how they speak and how that leads to certain reactions and stuff like that. I'm somebody who doesn't burp, basically. Andrew's somebody who burps all the time. He actually has, like, I believe he straight up has like a health problem of some kind that leads to that kind of like gastrointestinal issue, but then he'll just like start proudly burping directly in front of the microphone from time to time, which I'm sure I'll get comments about during the 999 series in particular. But I have the opposite thing, where I basically never burp. Once every few weeks I'll have a genuine burp that like catches me by surprise, where like it just kind of came out mid-sentence, and I'm like, what happened? How did I do that? teach me teach me the secrets of your people, me, because I don't know how I did that. Because it doesn't happen really. I don't really get the concept usually. But when I'm doing a bunch of commentary, all the weirdest quirks will happen sometimes. So one of the things is I need to try to avoid. I've learned over time to try to avoid drinking carbonated beverages as best as I can, because I'll start getting croaky. You'll get like these gas buildups, and then like it'll kind of just like eventually like my throat will just like sort of like gurgle out of nowhere, which I hate, and it's definitely been caught on microphone a number of times. So I've tried to avoid carbonated drinks generally on the channel. Very good incentive to get my caffeine from coffee rather than anything else, for example. And I don't really drink sodas and stuff like that because it interferes with my job in that way, and I don't like it. Good reason. It's actually beneficial to work around that, as it turns out, because it just mostly encourages me not to drink a bunch of things that I probably shouldn't drink anyway. I hate that. I hate the gurgle stuff that just comes out. It's like, it's just, that's probably a symptom of me not burping correctly or something. And it's just like a thing that I get to deal with, so hooray. Sucks, but it's not really like a real, actual problem in life, so it's kind of whatever. For hiccups, those catch me by surprise. I don't really get the hiccups during playthroughs ever. So I don't know what causes hiccups in general. Like, I know the literal thing that causes hiccups, but I don't really know what human behavior specifically tends to cause hiccups. But the way I generally talk during playthroughs doesn't generally cause like the hiccups to begin. Instead, I get hiccup, which is that a hiccup comes out of nowhere mid-sentence sometimes. It's just one sudden, like, high-pitched noise, like inhale, I guess. Yeah, hiccups are inhales, aren't they? Like, and I always make fun of it. I always like, hiccup, no, why? Which I believe happened once during this video specifically, which is, I think I might have even said, yeah, we'll get around to that later. Or that might have been the other thing that happens, because while the hiccups happen out of nowhere, there's also another thing that happens, which is that I'll suddenly be unable to speak. And that's a weird feeling. I'll get a weird thing where I just have to like inhale and exhale to get rid of it, where like it's like my vocal cords stop responding mid-word, and it almost sounds like a weird, like, I think that might be what you mean when you talk about a murdered burp, and you might not be wrong, but it doesn't. I'm not sure if it feels like a burp necessarily, but there's definitely like a suddenly like, oh, this word died halfway through, and like this weird tenseness in my vocals occurs, and then I have to dispel it and then just kind of try to start the word over. And that's just a real thing that happens. But above all else, I think the most frustrating thing for a while is reading. So I've never been good at reading. I was like, I can read fine, like, as in like I can just sit around and just read a book, like hold it and just read it to myself, like, as in like not like reading aloud, but just reading it. Like, that's fine. I love reading. It's great. Even though I don't often read books, I just will often read articles or discussions and all these other things. Like, I like the act of reading, even if I don't necessarily actively seek out full-on books all the time. But then Let's Plays came, and suddenly I was supposed to read these things aloud, and I think I still have the gag reel in there of my, of back when I did Outlast, where I believe I just could not figure out, like, there was something about the font and the word phrasing and stuff like that of a particular thing I was supposed to read, where, like, I could just not get through it successfully without fail, ever. I had to start over and over and over again in an attempt to correctly read this damn entry, and I just could not get through it for some reason. It was so frustrating. So I just spliced together several different attempts to get the read correctly. That was back when I was super serious about trying to get the reading done correctly in these games. Being a stickler for quality, which is easier to do when you're only making one video a day, which when I was making Outlast, it was just one video a day, if not, and maybe not even one video a day, so it was very easy to care too much about that kind of stuff and wanted to get the reading done right. But then came Dragon Age Inquisition, and suddenly, like, I'm just reading constantly, and there's, like, paragraph upon paragraph, and, like, 100 different documents, and it's just so much reading that, I just had to eventually just accept, the part of me that stumbles over words and screws up and has to start sentences over and stuff like that. Although there were a few times where I screwed up so bad at some stupid fantasy word that I could not figure out how to pronounce, that it caught me, dead in my tracks, and then killed the flow of the sentence, that I would actually, like, intentionally pause my, I would pause at the reading, and I'd get up and walk away, and there'd be this dead point in my recording where there was just no commentary for a while, and that was actually helpful because the no talking meant, and the no waveform meant that there was an obvious blank spot that I would just cut out, and I would be very, it'd be very, very obvious. And then I would come back and read it correctly the second time, and then put that in the video instead. Like, and I would, I would edit that seamlessly in some of those old videos so that you could never tell that that happened. And that still happens very rarely, but still sometimes I just fuck up so bad. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going away. I'm gonna come back because I've just been reading too much in a row in some particular game, and like I'll do a crossfade carefully enough in a way that doesn't call attention that I can actually try to hide entirely that the cut even happens. But yeah, marathon reading is not something I was prepared for when I started this necessarily. But the reason I bring it up in this context is I technically talked about speech patterns, which relates to like the stumbling over words while reading and issues like that. But the real reason I brought it up was in the context of what you talked about, like hiccups and all these other like weird vocal, I was gonna say tics, but they're not tics, because a vocal tic is like something you add on. It's more like they're more like vocal failings when something malfunctions, and we are imperfect humans don't even always understand what's malfunctioning. The one that happens for reading specifically is I'll yawn, and I hate it. And you'll catch me yawning sometimes. Well, I try desperately to hide the sound completely. And you'll hear me suddenly very specifically start taking specific deep breaths sometimes when I'm recording, because I'm like, I think that yawning has something to do with having too much CO2 buildup. So I'm like, if you carefully exhale and inhale and exhale deeply or something, like you can probably like force your vocals to be going, your air intake to be and outtake to be more correct to avoid the yawn entirely or something like that. So I'll often be actively combating the yawn, and I hated it. Something about my speech patterns, I don't know what it is, but just something about focusing on text and trying to make sure I'm articulating it correctly while interpreting all these damn made-up fantasy words that happen in all these games I play, because those are frustrating, all these made-up town names and people names and concept names that I'm overflowed with and just screw over with everything, while also just trying to articulate these sentences. Something about reading affects my breathing patterns in a way that's different from just normal talking. Because normal talking, I don't have this problem, but when I start reading, suddenly, like, I become yawn-prone in a way that I'm not ever when I'm doing natural commentary. So reading aloud is a different state of mind than natural commentating, which is obviously the case, but apparently that different state of mind also translates into a different state of breathing, which leads to me yawning. And that's the weirdest, like, problem to deal with, but it's a very it's so close to me. I don't like spiders. Even cartoon dumb spiders are just, once they're close enough, that's something that's like weirder, even in this game. But yeah, that's one of the frustrating things, since so like in some of my playthroughs, like Masquerada and stuff like that, where it's just non-stop reading like the entire game, you'll sometimes catch me yawning, or you'll hear me adopt different speech patterns or breathing patterns that might be audible, that are specifically my constructs I've created to try to fight off the yawn. And I'm trying to get better at it. And lately, I've been finding that, I think that one of the issues may have been that I talk too quickly while reading, and that's like a problem for two reasons. It may be one. I think it's simultaneously both problems, which is that when I talk too quickly while reading, it leads to probably the part where I start stumbling over the words I'm trying to read and screwing up, and then making everything worse. But also probably the part that starts breathing incorrectly and leading to the yawns and stuff like that. So I have been trying to talk at a slower and more deliberate pace when I do specifically reading, to hopefully both improve the read itself, and I also think it might actually be in the process of fixing the breathing part, which is such a weird thing to think about. It's really weird talking in depth about these things. Like, this has been a weird, like, this isn't a really that weird of an episode, but it's an episode that is endemic of what my life is, which is that I have such weirdly articulate and specific and explainable things behind how my schedule works, whether I choose to do a video with other people or alone, slash whether I chose to play specific games in specific orders, or how I schedule. I already said scheduling, but like, or how I breathe while making videos, or whether I play specific games. Like, so many variables that I have kind of answers for, and weird deliberate things down to the way I breathe being things that I actually actively think about. Like, this is not a throwaway question, as silly as it might sound, about like murdered burps and stuff like that. Like, that is genuinely a thing that plagues my mind from time to time, is concepts of how my breathing and speech patterns affect how I do my job and stuff like that. It's so such a weird life that I stumbled into. But yeah, I figured I'd get to that question both because it made me laugh when I read it, and also because it's actually totally worth answering. So yes, you too can start your Let's Play channel for free. Seriously, YouTube. Go to YouTube, and you hop on your computer that you may hopefully have that is vaguely usable. You just download OBS for free, get a microphone. You probably already have some kind of microphone for multiplayer stuff, but if you really need to, you could just spend like $50-ish to buy like a snowball on sale or something. And you can just start making videos, and it's that easy. And that's the easy part, is starting. But then, as time goes on, you get to become obsessive over so many weird details like me about how all this stuff works, and it's the most bizarre experience, and you can never fully understand it until you get into it, which, fittingly enough, this question comes from somebody who has their own channel, Colonel RPG. If you missed it, I played Viking Squad with him on this channel, and also he was in 2 episodes of the Save the Universe podcast, and maybe he'll be on future ones or something. We haven't really talked about it too much. We've rebranded the podcast so we can technically bring on different groups of people, but it's wrangling people for the podcast is so iffy lately, because we don't even record on specific days or at specific times lately, that it's hard to even think about bringing a guest on lately, because juggling with D&D and Bird's day job has been an interesting thing to deal with. But yeah, throwing that aside. But yeah, if you want to start nobody asked this, but if you want to start a YouTube channel, it's that easy. You just can upload videos to YouTube that you record in OBS, and with a microphone that's easy to get on consumer grade. Everything is cheap consumer grade or free, a lot of the tools that are involved here. And you can get much better tools if you're willing to invest, but it's all there and it's all possible, and it really is a truly democratic experience that everyone can kind of take part in. And so if you've ever wanted to have perspective on how this whole thing works, and what the hell's going on behind the scenes, and learn more about what goes on with your favorite YouTuber, Let's Play people, and what the hell the process is and stuff like that, you can actually learn a lot by just doing it yourself for a while. Don't expect results. It's just the market's so flooded, and nothing about YouTube is actually designed to help new people be discovered. It's really just biased in favor of anything that does well already. So new channels struggle like crazy and are unlikely to get views at all, and just sit there at rock bottom for years. But it's worth experimenting, just it's like an experience you can learn if you have some free time, and just be like, oh yeah, I kind of gained an insight into that whole thing works that I watch all the time, and now I kind of view all these videos differently. Like, I started watching Let's Plays differently when I was making them, that's for sure. In fact, I like different Let's Plays for different reasons now, specifically because I make them, and for different reasons than other people would even understand in many cases. And so, like, that's an interesting thing in its own right. Like, for a brief little bit, for example, I had the really enjoyable experience. I'm so far off topic now, and this is the longest thing ever, but I just wanted to get your money's worth, I guess. once upon a time, Game Grumps did, like in the last year or so, did solo videos. And that was like, I was so into that, because they're a duo channel. And suddenly, Aaron Hansen, Egoraptor, was doing a solo playthrough of Mega Man X, and I'm like, this is everything I've always recommended to people, because like, first of all, I say if you're gonna try to do a solo thing, if you're gonna try Let's Playing, just do something that's from the heart. Just pick a thing that really matters to you and just go for it, because that enthusiasm and your genuine feelings for that game, as opposed to picking something that'll do well on the internet or something, or like those kind of cynical choices. For your first project, just picking something like that you just genuinely care about and just going for it can just have a lot of meaning. But also, it was super relatable to me on a this is what I mean when I talk about I watch stuff for different reasons because I make videos myself. Is that he was a duo person transitioning into solo. I wasn't a really transition because they didn't stick with it or anything, but like it was an experiment, and like that was my life. I did duo videos with Andrew for like 2 years before I made a single one of these like solo videos myself on this channel, and that transition speaks to what I talked to you before about like how I didn't have a figured out commentary style, and like that evolved over time, and why people don't like my old videos oftentimes. Like that's a thing. And like, so for me, it was like, oh, this guy he relies on another person to do commentary all the time, and now he doesn't have that other person. Like, this is so cool because I get to watch him like kind of realize from moment to moment, like there's not a person to bounce jokes off. Like I saw him a few times throw a joke at no one, and then no one responded, and there's like a real like, oh crap, that muscle that flexes that tells you to do that, it doesn't work anymore. You can't do that anymore. And that's actually really refreshing, and so like that's actually really interesting to watch. If you want to just watch, especially if you're a creator, if you're a YouTube creator, or you're just interested in seeing the roots and developments of YouTube creators, it's worth investigating. If you like Game Grumps, look up Aaron Hansen's Mega Man X playthrough that he did on his own. The one that's solo. I think he might have done one with another person at one point too, but the recent one was just him alone. And watching a duo commentator struggle like that, it's both entertaining and endearing, and also enlightening in a way. And you can also learn that from me. Look at my channel. Look at my first videos. Okay, no, more like look at a video on sad games from 2011. Then look at a video on sad games from like say 2014, like when we were much more used to what we were doing there. Then look at my videos of like Outlast or Demon's Souls from like 2013, which is when I started my solo stuff, and see how weird my interpretation of how to transition was, and then see how I like. Then you're watching my stuff already, so it'll immediately be apparent how it changes from then to now, for example. And then hey, even look at like PewDiePie, like his first video ever, for example, or his first few from like, I don't know, was it 2010 or something like that? It was a long time ago. Versus like say PewDiePie in like the height of his leaping somewhere in the range of like, I don't know, 2013 to 2015 or something like that, and just see how he even evolves. Like it is really funny. Like there's a part where there's a PewDiePie quote where he talks about like people that overreact to videos and how he's not going to do that, for example. And like that's a thing that actually happened, like talking about like faking emotions or something like that, which is of course something that the most famous horror players do. And if anyone thinks they don't, then boy oh boy, you don't understand what it means when that's their job, and they always react that way because they need to, because it's how they make their living and how their audience works. And if they don't fake it when they need to, then they literally will just not have videos to make. But yeah, like it's watching Let's Players transition between different types of Let's Plays, or watching them transition over time is actually super entertaining and educational. Even Michael Jones, he's primarily from doing all these multi-person videos with Achievement Hunter, but he also did solo videos of like, I think Resident Evil 4 and Banjo-Kazooie or something, where it's just him alone. And like, if you want to do this kind of content in particular, like it's actually like, it can be educational to see how that kind of stuff changes and how the perspective shift affects how you interact with these kinds of mediums. Anyway, that was my big long rant. I answered 2 questions, basically. One from my last ever, like, my closing question, I think, about will I play at Game X, and then the Kernel RPG one. I'll get you next questions next time. It'll be less podcasty and less tangential, but I had a few things that are recent developments I wanted to discuss, in general concepts that I wanted to get through while they're, like, fresh in my head. And I think they're worth getting to. I feel so indecisive about the series every time I ever do it, because I'm like, was this even a worthwhile video? But people have been positive so far, so I'm just gonna go forth with confidence that this is all doing just fine anyway. So, like always, send your questions to KeithBallardQuestions@gmail.com. It's Keith Ballard, not Ballard Keith, right? I don't know. Check the description / corner of the screen. It's there for you. You can see it. And thanks for watching, like always, guys. Send your questions in. I'll get to more of them next time, and I will see you next time.